good at letting go. I'm not good at letting go. How I feel about you. How I feel about you. I'm always looking at my phone. Helps me forget I'm all alone. I always think about you. I can't live without you anymore. Oh. You're always scared of getting caught, always questioning your thoughts, but you can't hide how you feel. I wanna know how you feel. Feels like time is moving quicker, but I'm getting slower. Guess that's just a part of getting older. Wish I could look away. 'Cause life might be good, but I wish that it would be better. I just wanna be better. Wanna be better. You try to love me and I probably shouldn't let you. Things would be better. Things would be better with you. Sideline watching the sunrise, traded in for some shut eye. I'm not really sleeping these days. I was lost, you were found, you were bringing me down. Just the thought of you, it fills me out. Think I'll stay home tonight. Life might be good, but I wish that it would be better. I just wanna be better. Wanna be better. 'Cause you try to love me and I probably shouldn't let you. 'Cause things would be better. Things would be better with you. Well, I'm sorry that things didn't go your way. If everything goes sideways, I'll be there to carry you. Face your fears. It's okay if you're feeling scared. Just know that I will be there, and you're gonna make it through. Yeah, you're gonna make it through.
Welcome to Collective's 5 p.m. Liturgy. I'm Kenny. I'm usually just the online host, but because Ben is taking a much-needed leave, I'll be your in-person host for the service tonight, too. So we're locally in DeLand, Florida, globally at wearecollectivechurch.com, where you can subscribe to stay connected. We're gathering safely in person, which means we're back to a higher level of caution with responsible and common sense distancing, self-managing within your exposure cluster. For the foreseeable future, we highly recommend that you wear a mask regardless of your vaccination status, as COVID cases are rising at an alarming rate. We have them available if you need one over at the bar over here or in the front of the room. We're also live streaming and we respect your privacy, so if you'd rather not be on camera, sit over there like behind Dave. In person and online, live now or later on, whenever, wherever, your presence makes us who we are. Welcome. Liturgy means the work of the people, not those on stage, but all of us working out our spiritual community together. Here to help us work are tonight's liturgists. Just a reminder, I'm still your online host, so if you're online, give me a shout out to let us know that you're with us tonight. You can participate in the service via the comment section. We're really glad to have you watching. Stepping in for Ben tonight, we have our own Dave Joseph. Dave has been part of this community for longer than pretty much any of us and has a valuable perspective to share in between the dad jokes. It's good to have you here. We have Dan Hensley and Michelle Brott on the liturgist couch this evening. Thank you both for being here. Our artist in residence, Freddie Wilson, is here with us this evening. It's always so good to hear and see you, Fred. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you, Kenny?
I'm doing okay, yeah. Coffee is still on pause this week. If you're interested in playing barista once the wheels are rolling again, reach out to me and I'll be more than happy to get you on the schedule. Point is, we are all a collective church. Dan, would you remind us what that means to us?
This is our community statement.
Take your mask off.
Oh, good idea. We value highly the metaphor of journey. We're different people from different places and backgrounds, representing an intergenerational community, and we've traveled different paths. So we agree not to make assumptions about the person across from us, next to us, or in conversation with us. We challenge ourselves to be sensitive, knowing this community includes a diverse group of people, from lifelong followers of Jesus to people who are just now open to the idea that God might exist. We strive to avoid offense, ask good questions, articulate and explain our responses. We don't assume fluency in Bible, spirituality, or church language, because we believe the message of Jesus is not for Christianity, but for humanity. So we do everything in the spirit of love and grace.
Wow.
That was a really good reading. So we are collective. Now join Fred as we sing that.
Whoa. Whoa. Travel different paths. We're beautiful people with messy pasts, so have no fear, no judgment here. Whether you believe in Jesus or don't believe in anything, something you can teach us. You belong, no right, no wrong. Leading into grace. Help us make a place with an open table. No one's turned away. We'll love without why. No one has to hide. Finding God in people, sharing hearts as equals. For you are held in light. Good news is on your side. Oh, oh, life is full of mystery. Solidarity helps us to find some peace in the great unknown. You don't have to be alone. Leading into grace. Help us make a place with an open table. No one's turned away. We'll love without why. No one has to hide. Finding God in people, sharing hearts as equals.
Thank you, Freddie. We are a collective church, we, us in the room, and those of us online. So we've got some eyes watching the stream, but we've only got one shout out. So Lisa Reynolds says hey to everybody in the room. So, hey Lisa. We've said it, we've sung it, we've connected online. Now it's time to figure out how we practice this week. And that begins with our weekly email. If you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe to the email and check the box for the rundown. Then you can pick which groups you want to see within the rundown, whether it's something every week like collective yoga or collective cares, or something once a month like art and soul or pints and parables. Remember though, you have to make sure to check the rundown, otherwise you won't be getting any of this exciting info in your inbox and you'll get nothing from us. Customize your dashboard for both communication and practice. Our first pints and parables since it went on hiatus last year was something of a success earlier this month. So I'm excited to announce we'll be doing it again to kick off the month of September. Once again, we'll be back at the table, and Heather will be running the show. I hope you can join us on September 1st as good friends, food and drinks at the table for the work that Parables will be doing in us. You can check that out on Facebook as an event, RSVP, and of course, invite your friends if they're willing to venture. Hopefully, we won't get rained out like last time because we weren't able to be outside. So hopefully that will not be the case this time. It's going to be, I think it's at 6. I can check, but the event is posted on Facebook. Remember, the point is the practice. Showing up, giving, and serving are some of the ways that we practice together. From the rundown of our weekly practices to giving financially, make your plan now to do what you might not want to do later this week. And of course, if you need any help, I'm more than happy to help you right after the service over at the bar, or you can come up to me over here. Since we've talked a lot about practicing this week, let's actually practice together now. So Dave, could you lead us in silence, please?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So if you guys, part of our practices here at Collective include times of silence. Throughout history, almost every religious tradition has valued the practice of silence. Psychology today tells us the value of silence at a counseling room. For those of you that have ever done counseling, my guess is you're a psychologist. Your counselor has told you to sit quietly and take deep breaths in times of high anxiety. So as we do this evening, if you want to sit comfortably in your chair with your feet firmly planted on the ground. And as you do, I want you to try to count your breaths as you breathe. So breathe slowly in through your nose and out through your mouth. Every time you breathe in, I want you to count. And when you get to the number 3, I want you to start back again at the number 1. If your mind wanders or you find yourself forgetting to count or going beyond 3, be gentle with yourself. Bring your attention back to your breath and start counting again. We'll sit in silence for 3 minutes.
Michelle, you're up.
Sorry, I'm still in good headspace.
Yeah.
All right, John 7:53 through 8:11. Then they all went home, but Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. At dawn, he appeared again in the temple courts where all the people gathered around him, and he sat down to teach them. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought in a woman caught in adultery. They made her stand before the group and said to Jesus, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law of Moses commanded us to stone such women." Oh, in the law, Moses commanded, got caught up again. "Now what do you say?" They were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. But Jesus bent down and started to write on the ground with his finger. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." Again, he stooped down and wrote on the ground. At this, those who heard began to go away one at a time, the older ones first, until only Jesus was left, with the woman still standing there. Jesus straightened up and asked her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" "No one, sir," she said. "Then neither do I condemn you," Jesus declared. "Now go and leave your life of sin."
Thank you, Michelle.
Plane of reality with you guys all caught up. Okay.
Well, thank you for catching up with us.
Yeah.
Everyone, round of applause for Michelle for coming back at us. Hey guys, I'm Dave. If you've been around Collective very long, you probably have met me. If we haven't met, I would love to meet you guys after the service today. I've been around this community for a long time, and I value the relationship I have with so many of you, and it's cool to see some people in the room that I haven't seen for a little while. So in our story this evening, Jesus interacts with some religious leaders, and so he's in a temple, sitting there and teaching some people, and all of a sudden, religious leaders burst in the room with a woman caught in the act of adultery, and they throw her on the ground in front of Jesus. Now, I could get into how offended I am just by the concept of this story. We may go there a little later. But the men want to receive permission for them to take stones and throw them at this woman until she is killed. Anyone think that's a little bit barbaric? Okay, good. I'm glad we're on the same page. Anyone wondering where the man is that was committing adultery with her? Okay, that's part of the story for me here is I'm wondering, like, why is it just the woman who's about to be killed? We've been speaking about wellness here for the last handful of weeks. I am going to get back to that, and some of you may not have any idea how I'm going to connect that, but I might, and if I don't connect it, then I guess that's my loss or your loss. I'm not really sure. But back to the story. I want to picture yourself as one of these religious leaders for a second. So you've grown up in a tradition where it's a very rigid tradition. You've been told all of these laws, and you have to keep these laws or else God will curse you, you're not part of the nation of Israel, whatever that is. And so I'm going to ask if you guys are comfortable. We're going to have a little bit of a conversation for just a second, and we're going to come back and have a couple of different conversations over the course of the evening. What are some of the words that you think these men would have been yelling at that woman, the woman that was caught in adultery? What do you think some of those words are that they were describing her as? So would you guys want to do this as just a big room right now? Do you want to do it in small groups? Anyone have any preferences? Big room? Okay. What are some of the words that you think these religious leaders are screaming at her? Yes. What do you say? Sinner and whore. Thank you. Harlot. Their favorite word, harlot. Dan, I think you're one of the few people I know that uses that word, but thank you. It's your age. What else? What? Dan beat you to harlot? How many of you are a little concerned at how quickly this crowd can be turned to the point that they want to murder this woman? Anyone a little concerned about that? Okay, so back to this woman. So this woman is drugged in the act of adultery, which means she is probably naked. She was drug out of whatever tent she was in and drugged there and thrown on the ground. At best, she might have a piece of cloth over her, but she is probably naked, thrown right here on the ground in front of Jesus while Jesus teaches. As a teacher, I don't have any idea how I would respond in that moment. I don't know what I would say, but Jesus' response isn't exactly what I would normally do. And so, in that moment, he crouches down. Sorry, Brandon, my camera angle is going to be terrible. So, he crouches down and begins to write on the ground. It's a little odd, because as a writer, I would think that John would tell us what Jesus is writing on the ground, but he tells us nothing besides the fact that Jesus just takes his finger and starts to write on the ground. In that moment, I wonder for this woman who feels more shame than she has probably ever felt in her entire life, who's there realizing that she's about to die. I wonder why this is what Jesus does. You know, I've constantly wondered, what are the words that Jesus was writing on the ground? If you guys know Caitlin White, she and I were talking about this a while back, and she said she has always been curious, what are the words that Jesus is writing on the ground? But John doesn't tell us anything. Anyone have any idea why, what are some reasons that Jesus could have done this? Anyone have any idea? Yeah. Okay, he's asking for guidance. What do I do with this group of assholes? Thank you. Okay, he physically brought himself down to her level. So she's there on the ground. He physically brought himself down. Anyone else? What's interesting to me is in that moment, you've got a bunch of men ready to kill this woman. My guess is if there's a naked woman on the ground, I am a male, my guess is the guys are all staring at this woman and also picturing what it's going to be like to get to stone her. And they're expecting this religious teacher to be like all of the other ones, to say, go for it. And when they don't get what they're expecting, I bet it draws the eyes of all of those people off of this woman. This woman's down here on the ground, and Jesus kneels down and starts writing. Would anyone else be leaning in to try to see what it is that he's writing on the ground or what he's doing? It's a pretty weird thing. And so the way I've always pictured this passage is that Jesus is there writing on the ground to try to draw the attention away from the woman, to take the looks of shame, the looks of anger away from her. So I used to teach middle school, so I'm apologizing for my jokes, although Bill loves it. So I used to teach middle school science, and one of the classes I taught was biology. Does anyone ever been interested in being a dolphin trainer in this room? A dolphin trainer. Okay, a couple of people. My wife is convinced that everyone that grows up in Florida at some point in their life wanted to be a dolphin trainer, so thank you for helping me to win this battle. So when you train a dolphin, if they're going to be on one of the shows at SeaWorld or wherever, they send the dolphin out, the trainer gives a signal. If the dolphin goes out and doesn't do what it's supposed to do, when the dolphin comes back, they take that big long stick that they have and they just start mercilessly beating this. No, they don't actually do that. They don't beat the dolphin. Instead, what they do is they yell really shameful comments at the dolphin. And they say, you're a terrible dolphin. If you were a better dolphin, then you would be able to do what these other ones are. You should not like the fact that... They don't do that either. Neither of those things would work very well. If you guys have kids, you probably know that neither of those things actually help to change behavior. Thank you. Instead, when you train a dolphin and they don't do what you want, you're told to give the dolphin no feedback at all. Teaching my classes, I used to tell them that I believed they were dolphins. And so I've got a couple of my students, I think, watching online tonight who are probably laughing at me. But I would, in the front of the class, when they were loud, when they were doing something they weren't supposed to, just look at the ground and start taking deep breaths. And if you've ever taught middle schoolers, it's virtually impossible to get them to be quiet, but within about 15 seconds, every single time they were silent. It's like there's some kind of power in this silencing and drawing attention away from whatever that negative behavior is. Continuing to hurl shameful statements doesn't seem to modify behavior. I wonder what it's like for this woman in that moment. The comments of shame, the thoughts of shame, of anger, of sadness, remorse, what it's like to think that your life is about to end, and how confused she was when Jesus started writing on the ground. The reality is that the older we get, and I say this as someone who's recognizing this more and more, we recognize that we're not perfect as we get older. I haven't gotten there yet because I'm not old yet, so I'm still Thank you, Bill. That was just for you. The older we get, we recognize that we're not perfect, that we've made mistakes, that things have happened in our lives, but we also start to get some internalized labels. Labels that people have given us over time, labels that for some of us the church has given us, or that we believe about ourselves. I think that's one of the reasons that the oldest people went away from this woman first. So Jesus is kneeling down, and they say, and Jesus looks up after the Pharisees say, hey, the law of Moses says to stone this woman, what should we do? And I'm convinced he keeps looking at the ground. He keeps looking at the ground, and he says, let the one of you who has no sin throw the first stone. And then he just continues to write on the ground. A few minutes later, he looks up, and there is no one there except the woman. He looks at her and says, does no one condemn you? She says, no, sir. And he says, well, neither do I. Go and leave your life of sin. It's an interesting thing. For this woman, as she watches all of these men drop their rocks and walk away, I wonder what is happening in her head. She's got all these labels that have been assigned to her. Harlot, sinner, what do you say, whore, some other labels that I could give. Like, those are the things that she believed about herself. And in those moments, as those men were leaving, I have to wonder if some of those labels went with them. So I want to take a second here. Again, and if this is something you guys feel comfortable with, what are some of the labels, negative labels that have been assigned to you or that you have assigned to yourself over the course of your life? Those labels that you have internalized. You don't have to say them out loud. You can just think for a second. If you want to say them, you can. Bitchy, thank you. Yeah. Procrastinator, okay. Yeah. Gay, crazy, lazy. What was the last one? Procrastinator. It's interesting. Mine is a different label, and mine is one that I've actually assigned to myself. Mine is fuck up. I believe that when something goes wrong, that is what I refer to myself as. Michelle, I got a question though. You said bitchy. Does that always define you? Does it sometimes define you? Okay. Right. So, I am in a therapy program about to graduate, and I come from a narrative therapy background, which believes that people are multi-storied. Your life is not defined by one story. There is no one single narrative that defines you in the same way bitchy doesn't define you. I'm going to try to beat Ben for how many times I can cuss during a service. So, no, but that single word doesn't define you. We don't always believe that about ourselves because the reality is, Michelle, the person that I see you as is a loving and compassionate and caring person who is direct. Now, yeah, I mean, that is what I see. But the reality is when negative experiences happen to us, we tend to internalize those labels. We allow those labels to take root. We allow our story to be defined by that label. But there's more labels that can be assigned. I want you to think for just a second, after thinking about what some of those negative labels are, think of what some of the positive labels are that you've had people say about you, or what some of the resources or strengths are that you have uniquely. Creative. Patient. Brutally honest. Yeah, that can be a good or a bad thing depending who you're talking to and when. Okay? Smart, athletic, good singer. It's funny, Jim, you and I were working earlier this week, and I thought about something you said. So, Jim has volunteered a ton of his time over the last few weeks helping us with renovations upstairs and probably 1,000,000 hours in the downstairs building. But Jim and I were talking about the fact that Jim is a perfectionist, which is an amazing thing, especially if you're doing carpentry work. I am not a perfectionist, so I tend to move really quickly through things. There are people that will see perfection as a positive thing, and there are people that see perfection as a negative thing. I wonder, sorry, I don't want to put you on the spot. Can I ask you a question? Sure. Have you ever had a boss take your perfection as a negative thing because you're not fast enough? Okay. Okay. And I'm not saying you're slow. I'm just wondering because that's something that for me, in times where I try to do a job really well, I get people that will say that about me. But yeah, so you've had perfection taken negatively. Have you had it taken positively? So some of these labels, they define us in multiple ways. I wonder, and I want to shift gears for just a second, as we look and understand the other people that are around us in the world. We live in probably the most polarizing society that we could possibly be in. Just earlier, about a week and a half ago, I was here, we were working, and there was some controversy around masks and vaccination, and just this thing erupted where people whose opinions aren't going to be changed started to discuss masks and whether or not people should be wearing masks, and then vaccination, is it safe, is it not safe? And we live in a world that is probably, I want to say it's hard to find information. There's a lot of people spreading misinformation. I'm going to say very directly from up here, Michelle, you'll like this, I believe that the vaccine is something everyone should have. Now the question is, and this was true in conversations with a couple of the people that were here with me, when the people leave that choose to not get vaccinated, is that the only label we apply to them? Is that the only story of their life? Is the criminal, who has a criminal background, is the only label that we can ever assign to them criminal? Is the only label of a Republican, the word Republican, sorry, I'm not allowed to say that, am I? Is the only label of a Democrat? Is it only label of, a police officer is the only label of Black Lives Matter? No, we are multi-storied. All of us have lots of different stories. We have things that we can disagree about, but the reality is that when we allow these labels about ourselves to become internalized in a negative way, we seek to be well. We seek to experience the wholeness of life that God wants for us and that you were created for. As well, when we see the other as defined by a single narrative, we cease to have wholeness for ourselves, and we cease to allow the other person to have wholeness. I look around the room, and we are more diverse than most of us believe that we are. I'm sure that there are people in the room that won't bring up beliefs that they have about certain topics because they feel like they're not going to be accepted, not going to be loved, not going to be whatever because of it. I walked into Collective, how long's Collective been around, Kenny? 8 years? I think that's 8. I think I can do math. 8 years ago, as someone that was not open to the LGBTQ community, I would have never said anything out loud. But in a room of people at Collective, I was able to communicate that I had a different opinion, and I was still loved for it, even though people desired for me to change. And eventually it did, because I was in a community that was loving enough and caring enough for that to happen. So may we see people as multi-storied. May we see people as defined by more than just a single label that we give them. Because then I think we start to bridge the divide between us and them. We don't lose out on the other beautiful parts of life because of a single label that people have. Interestingly, we're going to transition to the Eucharist. I again want to thank Sharon for all that she has done for this. She will be serving us this evening wearing gloves, and we will be up front here. There's little containers of grape juice and bread. And so as you come up, you'll be able to receive that here. Interestingly, on the night that Jesus was betrayed, he was betrayed by one of his best friends. He's sitting at dinner with one of his best friends who had decided that for some pieces of silver, they would sell him out so that he could be murdered. So Jesus is sitting there with his best friends, and he knows this one friend is sitting there that has turned him in so that he can be murdered. And even though that man is sitting there, Jesus still takes a loaf of bread, and he breaks it, and he passes it around the table, including to Judas, to take the body. And he says, "Take and eat. This is my body, which was given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." When the dinner was over, he took a cup that was full of wine, and he said, "Drink this, all of you. This is my blood poured out for you and for many for the forgiveness of sins. As often as you drink it, do this in remembrance of me." Jesus is at a meal with all kinds of sinners, all kinds of people from different perspectives. If you don't know much about Bible history, some of the people sitting at the table believed that every Roman should be murdered and carried around little knives so if they were in a back alley, they could murder them. Others believed that Roman occupation wasn't a bad thing. Judas sold out Jesus and yet was still at a table where he got to receive this meal. We come to this table as different people from different places and backgrounds, united in our differences, working to remove hurtful labels. The hurtful labels that we have for ourselves, the hurtful labels that we say to others, that we may live in a world that is more just and a world that is healthier for us all. As you come and take the bread and the grape juice, may you turn to the person behind you and say, "Bread for the journey and nourishment for the soul."
I heard myself today to see if I still feel. I focus on the pain, the only thing that's real. The needle tears a hole, that old familiar sting, and try to kill it all away. But I remember everything. Everyone I know goes away in the end, and you could have it all. My empire of dirt, I will let you down. I will make you hurt. I'll wear this crown of thorns upon my liar's chair, full of broken thoughts that I cannot repair. Beneath these stains of time, the feelings disappear. You are someone else. I'm still right here. What have I become? My sweetest friend. Everyone I know goes away in the end, and you could have it all. My empire of dirt, I will let you down. I will make you hurt. If I could start again, a million miles away, I would keep myself. I would find a way.
Thanks so much for joining us in person and online. Huge thank you to Dave, to Freddie, and to our liturgists. Thank you again for making financial support a part of your practice at collectivegives.com. And make your plan to stay connected at wearecollectivechurch.com. You can update your preferences to customize your engagement. For benediction this evening, we have another observation from Anne Lamott, this time excerpted from her book, Stitches, a Handbook on Meaning, Hope, and Repair. We live stitch by stitch when we're lucky. If you fixate on the big picture, the whole shebang, the overview, you miss the stitching. And maybe the stitching is crude or it is unraveling, but if it were precise, we pretend that life was just fine and running like a Swiss watch. This is not helpful if on the inside our understanding is that life is more often a cuckoo clock with rusty gears. In the aftermath of loss, we do what we have always done. Although we are changed, maybe more afraid, we do what we can as well as we can. My pastor, Veronica, one Sunday told the story of a sparrow lying in the street with its legs straight up in the air, sweating a little under its feathery arms. A warhorse walks up to the bird and asks, "What on earth are you doing?" The sparrow replies, "I heard the sky was falling and I wanted to help." The horse laughs a big, loud, sneering horse laugh and says, "Do you really think they're going to hold back the sky with those scrawny little legs?" And the sparrow says, "One does what one can."
If we can, let's put our hands together as a symbol of our intention. Put them to our forehead for clarity of thought, to our mouths for clarity of speech, to our hearts for clarity of action, so that all that we say and do, love, may be our first thought, our first word, and our first deed. Grace and peace.
Now let us put our hands to service in cleaning and clearing for our neighbors who practice yoga this week, like collective yoga tomorrow night. please clear the room.